I asked ChatGPT to show me sudden, unnatural drops in prices that may indicate manipulation. And the chart from this morning's price action came up. Okay, I gotta give the tinfoil guys a bone, but it honestly could just be that Donald Trump got his coffee and then started posting at 7:15 and 7:40 this morning about applying 25% tariffs on Apple and 50% tariffs on the EU. Whatever is causing the price to drop in the short term is unlikely to affect the long-term bullish catalysts that are going to drive Bitcoin's price to 150,000 and above in the long term. Like corporate companies buying Bitcoin hand over fist. Similar Scientific just bought another $50 million worth of Bitcoin. What about the 7th largest economy in the world, in Texas, praising Bitcoin and adding it as a strategic reserve asset as early as today or Monday of next week? What about the ETF flows, which continue to pile in for Bitcoin? In fact, IBIT had the #1 flow of all ETFs yesterday. I mean, even tiny companies like Metaplanet are the #1 traded stocks in Japan. Bitcoin is becoming the new S&P 500 as the world shifts away from other stores of value. Today, we're going to look at the tectonic shifts happening in the markets in the world and share why this bull run might be just getting started. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Let's go. Bitcoin crossed 112K yesterday and cooled down after rising over 15% over the last several days. The craziest part about this rise is that retail hasn't even joined the party yet.
And backed by corporate buying and institutions, retail investors haven't even joined the party yet. And it speaks to one of the big Bitcoin themes this year, which is reduced volatility. So now Bitcoin charting new territory at about $111,000. Rosenblatt saying this morning, buying Bitcoin at record levels, usually not a good idea, but this time it's different.
She's right. This time it is different. There isn't any other places for investors to park capital. Bitcoin is not only a risk on and a risk off asset, but it's also capturing all of the flows from places where investors used to put their money that are no longer safe. I mean, look at this. The largest life insurance company in Japan just showed $25 billion worth of losses from holding Japanese bonds and say that they're going to have to decrease their exposure. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is rising perfectly in tandem with the Japanese 30-year. Interesting chart. I mean, if you were an American investor, would you invest in a company that grew 1% last year and the president of the United States just threatened a 25% tariff if you don't move your operations back to the US? Mike Novogratz says that the world is waking up to Bitcoin being the store of value. And Donald Trump and this administration is just stirring the animal spirits.
Do you think the news around the crypto ecosystem is helping to drive the price of Bitcoin? What's wagging the dog here?
I think, listen, it started with Larry Fink when he got orange pilled. And the largest asset manager in the world said, this is a real asset, in at least Bitcoin, that everyone should be part of. And lots of other companies, Invesco with us, followed suit, right? And so that was kind of round one of institutions coming in. But really, it was the change of the shift of approach from the Gary Gensler SEC to this Trump administration, which has just embraced our industry. And that freed up the animal spirits, both here and abroad. Right, I've had conversations with heads of large sovereign wealth funds that said, if America's buying Bitcoin, we're buying Bitcoin. And so you're seeing, like, the snowball is rolling downhill. The one thing that could have held it back some, at least the Bitcoin price, would have been if, Scott Bessent and his team and Congress could have really knock that deficit from 7% of GDP down towards 3%, which was his plan. Right now, it looks like it's going from 7 to 8. And, I like Scott Bessent a lot. I think he's as competent and capable as anybody. We're in a really hard position as a country. And when you have this kind of debt, and you're seeing it with long ends of interest, yield curves are selling off everywhere. The dollar's under pressure, and that all is very good for Bitcoin and crypto assets as well.
By 2045, some analysts predict that Wall Street will own about 50% of all of the Bitcoin out there. Everyone else is finally starting to catch on to the MicroStrategy playbook. What happens when GameStop comes in and buys $4.7 billion worth of Bitcoin? Their CEO says that they're looking for alpha in places where others aren't looking.
I invested in GameStop because I thought it was cheap. I thought the intrinsic value of the business was worth more than the price that I paid. There was a tremendous amount of skepticism around GameStop. And those are the things that I like. I like looking at things where no one is looking at them. Those are usually some of the best opportunities.
What if Tether actually got up to owning 5% of the network with Jack Mallers and 21 Capital? Jeff Ross predicted that Bitcoin will be the global store of value for people all over the world. And this clip's an oldie but goodie, but he says this is why he believed that Bitcoin will get to 475K by Q4 of 2025. And we may just be on the beginning parts of that upward rise.
It's inevitable that Bitcoin will eventually become the world's reserve currency and the world's reserve asset. We're on that trajectory. People hate the term inevitable because they think that implies no human effort. I think there's going to be tons of human effort from Bitcoiners who understand Bitcoin. And because of that effort, Bitcoin will become inevitably the world's reserve asset and the world's reserve currency in time, in decades.
I completely agree with that. And I think that hands are going to be forced as well. Like I'm fairly confident from people I've spoken to that the UAE hold a significant amount of Bitcoin, whether that's 200, 300, 400,000 coins, whatever. That's going to play into it. And I think that may end up forcing the US's hand in some way, maybe quite quickly. But in terms of like this Bitcoin cycle, how important do you think the US involvement is?
I think it's just basically I think it's important for this cycle, as you say. I think it's going to be the main driver that will push us to the next level. So I'm still holding on to my thesis or my guess of Bitcoin at a price target of about 475,000 by the fourth quarter of 2025. And that's because of now mild nation state involvement. So the US will probably get involved to some degree. That should start a bit of a foot race for Bitcoin, but I don't think it will be as impressive as a lot of people think. You know, we had MicroStrategy last cycle. Now we have a handful of companies doing the Bitcoin treasury strategy. It's great to see, but it's still just a teeny tiny drop in the bucket so far. But that's enough, I think, enough interest to help push the price higher in this next cycle. So once we see liquidity really start to take off, I think that's what will propel Bitcoin to, you know, a 500K valuation, maybe a million, who knows? My range is anywhere from 200,000 to a million at some point. And then I think people will get over leveraged again, like people always do, because they get caught up in the hype and they do stupid things. And then we have another crash after that. And then the next cycle, I think, will be more of nation state involvement kind of early on. And we'll start seeing nation states stacking at a more significant level.
If Bitcoin is worth 475K, you probably don't want to sell that Bitcoin. Like most wealthy people do, they don't sell valuable assets. They borrow against them. And Ledn gives you that opportunity. Unlock liquidity in your Bitcoin without selling your Bitcoin. They've issued over $9 billion worth of loans since 2018 to tens of thousands of customers all over the world. And they've done so without losing a single cent or sat of customer money, and typically deliver liquidity into a customer's account in just 18 hours. The process is fast, simple, and transparent, which is why they're trusted with over 1,000 five-star customer reviews. Get started with your first loan at just 12.4%. But if you go to learn.ledn.io/simply, well, you can get 0.25% off your first loan. Unlock liquidity in your Bitcoin without selling it with Ledn. One of the other things that people overlook is that if Bitcoin is worth 475K per coin this year, well, do you have the necessary skills and ability to remove that Bitcoin from third-party exchanges like Coinbase and take true self-custody of your Bitcoin? Well, you can get that confidence by working with an advisor at thebitcoinway.com. They have members of their team that will walk you through self-custody step by step. How do I do it privately, safely, securely, and confidently? Schedule a free 30-minute consultation with their team at thebitcoinway.com/simplybitcoin. The big and final boss will be when the US government finally steps in and adds Bitcoin to their balance sheet. And no, we're not talking about a way where they sell off other things in a neutral way, but they actually just start printing the currency to buy the most valuable asset in the world. We have a debt problem, and Bitcoin is the only way out.
It's like if you look at the current state of the US government and our debt burden, literally the only way you could even conceivably imagine ourselves digging ourselves out of this is to print money and buy Bitcoin. We have a unique opportunity here where we're the only country in the world where our debt is denominated in our own shitcoin. And we have the ability to print that shitcoin and buy the hardest asset that's ever existed. Now, I used to joke about this. I actually thought it was never a possibility, like never going to happen. And we're starting to see the early signs of it. Now, there's a delicate act here, right? Because you don't want the currency to go into free fall. That's where you end up in a true mandible situation. And even without the Bitcoin piece, we're already like kind of on the precipice of it. We're already like you're starting to see, 10-year treasury yields go out of control. Like people starting to realize, like, why am I lending the US government money for 10 years at a low interest rate? And so the confidence there is already shook. Now, if you shake confidence more, it could get really bad really quickly. So there's a delicate balancing act where you start to see things like in the Lummis bill, we're selling our gold that's not marked to market for Bitcoin. We're not going to print money to buy Bitcoin. But the real like grug brain move here is you print as much as the market can tolerate and you buy as much Bitcoin as possible. That Bitcoin appreciates in purchasing power over time, and all of a sudden our government is solvent instead of not solvent. Who wouldn't want a solvent government? And you can't imagine any other possibility where that could even be possible at our current debt burden.
But Larry Lepore points out the interesting fact. The government can't print more Bitcoin.
If we're in a sovereign debt crisis, and I think we are, and if we're going to have a lot of inflation, I think we do, and if we're going to go to have a monetary reset, there are going to be real winners and losers. And you're not going to get a do-over. You're not going to get a do-over. It's not going to be like, oh gosh, I missed it. Maybe I'll, it's like we could wake up one day and the government could say, we're going to a gold standard, we're taking the price of gold up to $20,000. Well, you either own gold and gold mining stocks or you don't. They're going to go up enormously. The same thing with Bitcoin. The U.S. could say we're going to do a strategic Bitcoin reserve and the Bitcoin price could triple. Well, if you don't have any, you don't benefit from that. So there will be, because of the risk of monetary debasement and the fact that there will be no do-over, I would just strongly encourage all of your listeners to have some allocation of their wealth into things that the government can't print. The government can't print gold, government can't print silver, government can't print Bitcoin, and the government can print dollars, and they're going to print a shitload of dollars, in my opinion.
So on this show, we talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, not other asset classes. And it's not because other asset classes aren't good or weren't good stores of value in the past. We believe that the bullish trends for Bitcoin, not only for individuals, but for corporations and for nation states, allow this to be the single best investing asset class moving forward, like the S&P 500 was for the last 100 years. One of the best investors of all time says that this is why diversification might be a bad idea.
Well, my idea of risk control is a little non-conventional. I like putting all my eggs in one basket and then watching the basket very carefully. I think, I don't know what they teach at Marshall, but at most business schools they teach, I think, a lot of nonsense called risk-adjusted return and diversification. Ouch. As a money manager, if you look at a normal portfolio, most people will make 70-80% of money that year on 2 or 3 ideas, even though they'll have 30 or 40 things in their portfolio. My concept was to put into those 2 or 3 ideas that I had the most conviction in. I was also lucky to travel across asset classes, so I traded commodities, currencies, bonds, and equities, and it gave me the discipline. If I didn't have a good idea in equities, I was happy to have no equities, or the same thing with bonds. So when you have a quiver with a bunch of arrows in it, you can usually find something to put a lot of money into. The only other thing I'd say is too many investors look at the present. The present is already in the price. You have to think out of the box and sort of visualize 18 to 24 months from now what the world is going to be and what securities might trade at. What a company's been earning is ridiculous. It doesn't mean anything. What you have to look at is what people think, what a company's earning, what people think it's going to earn, and if you can see something 2 years that's going to be entirely different than the conventional wisdom, that's how you make money. My first boss used to say the obvious is obviously wrong. If you invest in conventional wisdom, you're going to lose your butt.
There is no second best. If you know what the best asset is, well, if you have the superior asset, the price is going up forever, Laura.
It's planned to hodl through all the cycles, and weather those, whatever 80% downturns when the crypto markets are in a bear market.
Yeah, again, I just disagree with your characterization. I don't expect an 80% downturn. I don't think it's a speculative asset, and I don't think you can quote unquote take money off the table. You're speaking like a crypto trader right now, right? Yeah, maybe you're doing it just to represent their interest, but I don't see the world that way. I think that Bitcoin is sound money. It's the technically superior asset class compared to the dollar, the euro, the peso, the bolivar, compared to a stock index, compared to gold, compared to silver, compared to everything you can conceivably buy. It is technically, thermodynamically superior as an asset. So when you say things like that to me, and maybe you just do it just to see what I'll say back, I just imagine you preaching to me in Argentina while you're asking me if I'm going to sell the dollars and buy pesos back again as the peso sleeps from 20 to the dollar to 40 to the dollar to 80 to the dollar. Or if we're in, Venezuela. I mean, you think a Venezuelan company is going to, like, quote unquote, take some money off the table by selling their U.S. stocks and their U.S. dollars to buy back into local currencies, or then, in Zimbabwe, you think they would take money off the table, right? Like, the point is, if you have the superior asset, it's going up forever, Laura. Forever.
Right.
Don't overcomplicate the trade. One of the biggest Bitcoin events of the year is here, just around the corner. From May 27th through May 29th, 20 to 30,000 people will be coming to Las Vegas to the Bitcoin conference. You'll get to hear from some amazing people, OGs in Bitcoin, US government officials like JD Vance, and many more who are bullish about Bitcoin and its future prospects for America and people globally. Use the promo code SIMPLY for 10% off your ticket. If you have the superior asset, hold it. Print the worthless money to buy the valuable money. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.